First Contact's Price. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the alien text scrolling across her quantum display, her hands trembling as the translation software decoded the consortium's classified database. The sterile walls of her lab at the Lunar Research Center seemed to close in as the terrible truth emerged before her eyes. "They never intended to welcome us," she whispered to the empty room. "We're just another resource to them." The classified documents revealed humanity's designation, Species 7249R. The R stood for resource, a classification the Galactic Consortium used for species they planned to exploit. Sarah had gained access to these files through months of careful work, appearing to be nothing more than an eager scientist studying the publicly available data the consortium had shared after first contact 6 months ago. The quantum display pulsed with more decoded information. Trade agreements, genetic studies, behavioral analyses, all pointing to a calculated plan to slowly drain Earth of its resources, both material and biological. The consortium had been watching humanity for centuries, categorizing their strengths and weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to make contact. Sarah's comm unit chimed. "Dr. Chen, Admiral Hayes requests your presence in the secure briefing room." The AI's voice was calm, unaware of how its message made Sarah's heart race. This was it, the moment to reveal what she'd discovered. The trip to the briefing room took her through the heart of humanity's greatest secret. While the consortium thought the Lunar Research Center was a simple scientific outpost, its true nature was far more complex. Behind the facade of basic laboratories lay quantum computing centers, advanced weapons research, and most importantly, the headquarters of the Human Defense Initiative. Admiral Catherine Hayes stood at the window, looking out at the Earth hanging in the black sky. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her weathered face reflecting decades of military service. She turned as Sarah entered, her expression grave. "Dr. Chen, I take it you found something significant." Sarah connected her quantum pad to the room's holographic system. The classified files sprang to life around them, a three-dimensional web of the consortium's true intentions. "They've been planning this for over 300 years, Sarah explained, highlighting key documents. "The consortium doesn't just want our resources, they want our genetic material. Human DNA has something they've never seen before." Hayes studied the floating data. "Adaptive resilience," she read aloud. "What does that mean to them?" "Our ability to survive, to adapt, to overcome challenges. It's unique among the species they've studied. They believe they can harvest this trait, incorporate it into their own genetic structure." Sarah pulled up more files. "But there's something else, something they don't know about us." The Admiral raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "The consortium's genetic analysis is based on old data, samples they collected centuries ago. They don't know about the changes." Sarah referenced the quantum evolution humanity had undergone in the past 50 years, a side effect of living in a world saturated with quantum technology. Human DNA had begun to shift, developing new properties that even Earth scientists were still trying to understand. Hayes smiled for the first time. "So their entire plan is based on outdated information. Can we use this?" Sarah nodded, bringing up a new set of data. "I've been conducting my own studies on consortium biology. They're not as advanced as they want us to believe. Their genetic structure is rigid, unchanging. They've sacrificed adaptability for stability. A weakness," Hayes mused. "But we need more than just biological advantages. What about their technology?" "That's the other thing I discovered." Sarah highlighted several technical documents. "Their quantum systems are primitive compared to ours. They never made the breakthrough we did with quantum consciousness integration. They think our technology is basic because that's what we've let them see." Hayes began pacing, her military mind processing the strategic implications. "So we have advantages they don't know about, both biological and technological. But we need more than that. We need allies." Sarah smiled, pulling up one final document. "I found something interesting in their species database. We're not the first resource species they've planned to exploit. There are others, dozens of them." Some have already been partially harvested. Others are still waiting their turn. If we reach out to them, we could build a coalition, Hayes finished, right under the consortium's nose. She turned to Sarah, her expression determined. How long can you maintain the facade of being an eager, naive scientist? As long as we need. They're so convinced of their superiority. They never question why I'm interested in their basic technical documents. Sarah's voice hardened. They think they're watching us, studying us. They don't realize we've been studying them right back. Hayes nodded, making a decision. Continue your research, Dr. Chen. Let them think you're just another curious human scientist, amazed by their advanced civilization. Meanwhile, I'll take your findings to the Security Council. We need to accelerate our preparations. As Sarah gathered her data to leave, Hayes spoke again. Dr. Chen, well done. You may have just given humanity the edge it needs to survive what's coming. Sarah paused at the door. Admiral, there's one more thing. The consortium. They're not just planning to harvest our genetic material. They're planning to do it soon. We have less than 6 months before they implement the first phase. Hayes' expression darkened. Then we have 6 months to turn their plans against them. Let's make them count. As Sarah walked back to her lab, she felt the weight of her discovery pressing down on her. The consortium thought they were dealing with a simple, naive species ready for harvesting. Soon, they would learn just how wrong they were. Humanity had never taken kindly to being someone else's resource. In her lab, Sarah began composing messages to her counterparts on other worlds, scientists and researchers who, like her, had been classified as resource species. The consortium's greatest mistake wasn't in trying to exploit humanity. It was in giving them access to their communication networks, thinking humans too primitive to use them effectively. The game was about to change, and the consortium didn't even know they were playing. The hidden game. The holographic meeting chamber deep within the Lunar Research Center hummed with quantum encryption fields. Dr. Sarah Chen watched as faces appeared around the virtual table. Not human faces, but those of scientists from other resource species. Each had responded to her carefully coded messages, hidden in routine scientific exchanges through the consortium's networks. The being called Zex-9 tilted their crystalline head structure, facets catching the holographic light. Your findings match our own, Dr. Chen. The consortium harvested 30% of my species' population before we understood what was happening. They called it a medical survey. A ripple of agreement passed through the gathering. The Mist Collective's representative, a swirling cloud of conscious particles, pulsed with anger. They took our children, claiming to be testing them for genetic viability. Many never returned. Sarah shared her latest analysis. The consortium's genetic database reveals a pattern. They're not just collecting samples, they're building something. A hybrid species that combines the most advantageous traits from each of us. But they don't understand what they're doing, came a new voice. Admiral Hayes stepped into the holographic space, her uniform crisp despite the late hour. Dr. Chen's research shows their genetic science is fundamentally flawed. They're working with an incomplete understanding of quantum genetic mechanics. In her lab adjacent to the meeting chamber, Sarah pulled up the relevant data. The consortium thinks DNA is simply a biological code that can be cut and pasted at will. They don't understand its quantum properties, the way genetic information exists in multiple states simultaneously, influenced by consciousness itself. The gathered scientists absorbed this information. Zex-9's crystalline structure vibrated with what Sarah had learned was their expression of hope. This is why they want human DNA so badly. They've observed your species' unusual adaptability, but don't understand its source. Precisely, Sarah confirmed. And they have no idea that we've already developed quantum genetic engineering far beyond their capabilities, which gives us an advantage if we work together. The next hour was spent in intense discussion. Each species shared their own discoveries, their own secret developments hidden from the consortium. The Mist Collective had perfected consciousness transfer technology. Zex9's people had developed crystals that could store and process quantum information at unprecedented speeds. Others brought their own contributions to the table. Admiral Hayes watched it all, occasionally asking pointed questions about military applications. When the scientific discussion wound down, she stepped forward again. What you've all shared confirms our strategy. The consortium's power relies on keeping species isolated, making each think they're alone in being exploited. That ends now. Sarah pulled up a new holographic display, a map of quantum communication nodes throughout consortium space. We've identified weaknesses in their network, points where we can establish secure channels between our species without their knowledge. But we'll need help from all of you. The plan took shape over the next several hours. Each species had developed their own methods of resistance, their own ways of hiding their true capabilities. Now those individual efforts would be combined into something greater. As the meeting concluded, the Mist Collective representative lingered. There is something else you should know, Dr. Chen. We have detected unusual quantum fluctuations in consortium space. We believe they're accelerating their plans, not just for humanity, but for all of us. Sarah felt a chill. How long? 3 months, perhaps 4, not the 6 you originally estimated. After the others had disconnected, Hayes turned to Sarah. Can we be ready in time? Sarah thought of the quantum shield technology being developed in the labs below, the new genetic defenses her team was perfecting. We have to be, but we need to accelerate our own plans too. The consortium is coming to survey Earth's population next month. We need to be ready before then. The Security Council has approved Operation Mirror, Hayes revealed. We're going to give the consortium exactly what they expect to see, a primitive species eager to be studied. Meanwhile, we prepare the real welcome they deserve. Sarah's voice was hard. She brought up one final holographic image, a detailed scan of a consortium genetic research vessel. They think they're coming to collect samples. Instead, they're going to provide some of their own. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You're not suggesting their own genetic technology used against them? Yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. They want to study human adaptability. Let's show them exactly how adaptable we can be. As Sarah walked back to her lab, she thought about all the species represented in that meeting. Each had suffered under the consortium's benevolent guidance. Each had been treated as nothing more than genetic raw material. But together, they were something else entirely. Something the consortium had never planned for. In her lab, Sarah began preparing for the consortium's survey team. They would arrive expecting to find primitive genetic research facilities, barely understanding the basics of DNA manipulation. Instead, they would walk into the most advanced quantum genetic laboratory in known space, disguised to look like something from centuries ago. The game of deception was entering its final phase. Soon, the consortium would learn that their carefully categorized resource species had resources they never imagined. The survey's surprise. The consortium survey ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a gleaming silver needle, its hull reflecting the morning sun. Dr. Sarah Chen watched from her laboratory window as it approached the designated landing zone outside the New Geneva Research Complex. Everything about the facility had been carefully staged, antiquated equipment in plain sight, cutting-edge technology hidden behind quantum camouflage fields. Consortium vessel Genetic Ascendancy requesting final approach clearance, the ship's communications officer announced, their translator making their voice sound artificially smooth. Sarah straightened her deliberately outdated lab coat. Clearance granted. Genetic Ascendancy. We're honored by your presence. The words tasted bitter, but she kept her voice eager and slightly nervous, exactly what they'd expect from a primitive scientist about to meet her technological superiors. The ship landed with precision, its boarding ramp extending like a silver tongue. The survey team that emerged was a carefully chosen mix of species, all high-ranking members of the consortium's genetic research division. Their leader, Chief Geneticist Varnkel, moved with the fluid grace of his serpentine species. His scales shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that Sarah knew indicated supreme confidence. Dr. Chen, Varnkel's translator, produced perfect English. Your reputation for enthusiasm precedes you. The consortium appreciates scientists who understand their proper place in the galactic order. Sarah bowed slightly, noting how the gesture pleased him. We're eager to learn from your wisdom, though I hope you'll forgive our primitive facilities. Varnkel's pupils contracted in what she knew was amusement. Quite primitive indeed. But that's why we're here, to help humanity advance, under proper guidance, of course. The tour began exactly as the consortium expected. Sarah showed them basic genetic sequencing equipment, purposefully slow computer systems, and research methods that would have been cutting edge a century ago. All the while, hidden quantum sensors mapped every detail of the survey team's biology. And this is our primary research database. Sarah gestured to a bank of computers that hummed with apparent inefficiency. We've managed to sequence about 30% of the human genome so far. One of Varnkel's assistants, a being with crystalline appendages, made a sound that their translator rendered as a patronizing chuckle. Only 30%. With these methods, it would take decades to complete the work. Which is why the consortium's help is so valuable, Sarah replied, activating a hidden command through her neural link. Throughout the facility, quantum processors began their work, undetectable to the consortium sensors. Varnkel moved to the center of the lab, his posture becoming more formal. We appreciate your cooperation, Dr. Chen. Now perhaps we should begin the actual survey. We'll need tissue samples from a representative population, starting with your research team. Of course, Sarah smiled. We've prepared a secure room for the procedure. Though I hope you don't mind if I ask a few questions during the process. We're very curious about your methods. The survey team followed her to a large chamber deeper in the facility. The room's walls were lined with what appeared to be basic medical equipment. Varnkel's team began setting up their own devices, sleek, advanced machines that made Earth's technology look primitive by comparison. Your curiosity is natural, Varnkel said as his team prepared, though much of our methodology is beyond your current level of comprehension. Now, who would like to be first? Sarah stepped forward. I would, if that's acceptable. As lead researcher, it seems appropriate. She lay on the examination table, watching as they activated their genetic sampling equipment. The machines hummed to life, surrounding her with scanning fields. What the consortium didn't realize was that their own equipment was now interfacing with hidden quantum systems throughout the room. Interesting, Varnkel murmured, studying the initial readings. Your genetic structure seems somewhat different from our historical samples. Evolution is constant, Sarah replied innocently. We've noticed some changes in human DNA over the generations. Nothing significant, of course. The serpentine geneticist's scales flickered with excitement. Perhaps more significant than you realize. The adaptability factors are remarkable. He turned to his team. Prepare for a full spectrum analysis. This sample could be exactly what we've been seeking. As the consortium equipment powered up to full capacity, Sarah sent a final neural command. Throughout the facility, quantum fields shifted. The consortium's sampling beam activated, but instead of extracting her genetic material, it encountered a carefully designed quantum mirror. Varnkel's eyes widened as his equipment began receiving data, not from Sarah's DNA, but from his own team's genetic structure. This is impossible. These readings. Is something wrong? Sarah asked, sitting up with false concern. The crystalline assistant rushed to the equipment. The genetic patterns. They're transforming, shifting in ways we've never seen. Shut it down, Varnkel ordered, his scales now pulsing with alarm patterns. But the process was already complete. His team's own sampling technology had been turned against them, mapping their genetic structures in ways their science had never achieved. Sarah stood, dropping all pretense of deference. Thank you for the demonstration of your equipment, Chief Geneticist. It's provided exactly the data we needed. What have you done? Varnkel's translator couldn't quite capture the mix of fear and rage in his voice. "The same thing you plan to do to us," Sarah replied, as quantum fields throughout the facility dropped their camouflage, revealing the true extent of Earth's technology. "We've learned everything about your biology, your genetic weaknesses, your inability to adapt. Knowledge you plan to use against us, now turned against you." The chamber's doors opened, admitting Admiral Hayes and a team of Earth security officers. "Chief Geneticist Varnkel," Hayes announced formally, "consider this humanity's response to being classified as a resource species." Around them, the new Geneva Research Complex revealed its true nature, not a primitive research facility, but one of the most advanced genetic research centers in known space. And through quantum channels, Sarah knew similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy, as other resource species launched their own operations against consortium facilities. The game of deception was over. Now the real negotiations could begin. Power shift. The consortium's High Council chamber erupted into chaos as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. On the massive holographic display dominating the center of the room, red alerts blazed from hundreds of genetic research facilities. Dr. Sarah Chen watched through quantum-linked feeds as the carefully constructed facade of consortium power began to crumble. "This is impossible." Supreme Counselor Mexthar's crystalline form vibrated with rage. "How could primitive species coordinate such actions? How could they access our secure facilities?" In the new Geneva Complex's secure chamber, Sarah turned to her captive audience. Chief Geneticist Varnkel and his team stood contained within a quantum isolation field, watching as their civilization's greatest secret was exposed across the galaxy. "Would you like to explain it to them?" Sarah asked Varnkel. "Or should I?" The serpentine geneticist's scales had lost their luminescence, now a dull gray of defeat. "You used our own networks against us. Every time we gave you access to our basic scientific data, we were mapping your entire system." Sarah finished. "Every security protocol, every genetic database, every dirty little secret about what you've done to other species. But that's not even the best part." She gestured, and new data appeared on the screen surrounding them. "Would you like to know what we found in your own genetic code?" Admiral Hayes stepped forward, addressing not just the captive survey team, but the quantum feed broadcasting to the High Council. "The consortium's entire genetic engineering program is based on a fundamental mistake. You thought you could force evolution, control adaptation, but you actually crippled yourselves." The data displays showed cellular structures, genetic sequences, quantum patterns that the consortium had never been able to see. Their own biology, laid bare in ways their science couldn't comprehend. "Your attempts to perfect your species through genetic engineering made you stable but static," Sarah explained. "You eliminated the quantum uncertainty that makes true adaptation possible. Every sample you took from other species, every attempt to incorporate their traits into your own genetics, only made the problem worse." In the High Council chamber, Mexthar's crystalline form trembled. "Cut this transmission. They're spreading lies to undermine our authority." "Are we?" Sarah's voice was calm. "Then explain why your own genetic records show increasing degradation with each generation. Explain why you've been desperately searching for new resource species, hoping to find the key to true adaptation. Throughout the galaxy, quantum channels that the consortium didn't know existed came alive. The Mist Collective shared proof of illegal genetic harvesting. Zex9's people revealed records of forced experimentation. Species after species, all classified as resources, stepped forward with evidence of the consortium's crimes. Your power was built on two things," Admiral Hayes declared to the High Council: "superior technology and biological control. You've just lost both." As if to emphasize her words, quantum shields around Earth and a dozen other worlds shimmed into visibility. The consortium's most advanced sensors hadn't detected them, couldn't even understand how they worked. "You have a choice," Sarah addressed the High Council directly. "You can attempt to maintain control through force, But your weapons rely on the same flawed understanding of quantum mechanics as your genetic science. Or what? Mexthar demanded. Or we can help you. Sarah's voice softened slightly. Earth's genetic science has already identified ways to reverse the damage you've done to yourselves. The other species you classified as resources have their own gifts to offer, not as subjects for harvesting, but as equals in a new galactic community. In the High Council chamber, a younger counselor stepped forward. Supreme Counselor, she speaks truth. Our own genetic scientists have been warning of degradation for generations. Perhaps. Silence. Mexthar's crystalline form pulsed with dangerous energy. We are the consortium. We have ruled the galaxy for millennia. We will not be dictated to by primitive species. Your rule was based on lies, Admiral Hayes replied. And those lies have been exposed not just to us, but to your own people. Check your internal networks. Across consortium space, secure channels were flooding with data. Every citizen with access to the quantum networks could now see the truth about their own genetic degradation, about the crimes committed in their name, about the real capabilities of the species they dismissed as primitive. In the New Geneva facility, Varnkel suddenly spoke. The quantum patterns in your genetic structure, they're not just adaptive. They're conscious. Sarah nodded. DNA isn't just a code. It's a quantum computer, processing information at levels your science never imagined. That's what you saw in our historical samples, what made you so eager to harvest human genetics. But you never understood what you were seeing. A new alert flashed across the displays. Throughout consortium space, their genetic research facilities were being shut down, not by external force, but by their own scientists, their own citizens, as the truth spread. The choice is yours. Sarah addressed the High Council one final time. But understand this. Humanity and our allies are no longer asking for permission. We're offering you a chance to be part of what comes next. I suggest you consider it carefully. As the quantum feeds went dark, Sarah turned to Admiral Hayes. Phase 1 is complete. Should we begin Phase 2? Hayes nodded. Signal the others. It's time to show the galaxy what real cooperation looks like. Across Earth's quantum networks, a new protocol activated. Operation Genesis was about to begin, and with it, the birth of a new galactic order, one built not on exploitation, but on the true understanding of life's infinite potential. Genesis. 3 months after the fall of the consortium's genetic research program, the new Galactic Assembly gathered for the first time. The massive chamber, constructed in neutral space, bore little resemblance to the hierarchical structure of the old Consortium Council. Here, representatives from all species sat in a circular arrangement, their positions randomized at each meeting to prevent any notion of rank status. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the central podium, surrounded by holographic displays showing the progress of Operation Genesis. Behind her, Earth's quantum shields rippled with new patterns, synchronized with similar shields protecting every world in the new alliance. The genetic restoration program has exceeded our initial projections, she announced to the assembled representatives. Thanks to the combined research of our allied species, we've successfully developed treatments for the consortium's genetic degradation. The first volunteers have shown remarkable improvement. Former Chief Geneticist Varnkel, now serving as a scientific advisor rather than a captor, moved forward. His scales had regained their luminescence, now showing patterns that indicated health rather than dominance. The quantum-conscious properties of human DNA, combined with the consciousness transfer techniques of the MIST Collective and the crystalline computing capabilities of Zex9's people, have achieved what our science thought impossible, he reported. We're not just halting genetic degradation. We're restoring our species' natural ability to adapt. The chamber hummed with excited discussion. Representatives from former consortium worlds spoke of populations embracing change, of young people developing new abilities as their quantum genetic potential was unlocked. The former resource species shared stories of reconciliation and collaboration. Admiral Hayes, watching from Earth's section, smiled as she saw the dream they'd fought for taking shape. The galaxy was transforming not through force or domination, but through the sharing of knowledge and the recognition of each species' unique gifts. A shimmer in the air announced the arrival of the Mist Collective's representative. The quantum consciousness network is now stable across all participating worlds, their translated voice announced. For the first time in galactic history, we can truly share experiences across species barriers. Sarah nodded, bringing up new displays. Which brings us to the next phase of Operation Genesis. We've proven that consciousness, genetics, and quantum mechanics are all interconnected. Now it's time to explore what that really means. The holographic displays showed a new kind of space station taking shape, not a seat of government or a research facility, but something entirely new. The Genesis Hub, Sarah explained, will be our first attempt at creating a truly multi-species civilization. Not just a place where different species live together, but where we can learn from each other in ways the consortium never imagined. The design incorporated elements from every member species. Quantum computing crystals from Zex-9's people formed its core. The Mist Collective's consciousness transfer technology enabled direct experience sharing. Human quantum genetic science allowed for unprecedented adaptation and growth. But the hub is just the beginning. Sarah continued. Already, we're seeing new possibilities emerge. Species that the consortium classified as primitive are revealing capabilities that their oppression had hidden. The quantum consciousness network is allowing forms of communication and collaboration that were previously impossible. She gestured, and the displays showed images from across the galaxy. Former consortium worlds working alongside their former resources, sharing technology and culture. New forms of art that combine multiple species perceptions. Scientific breakthroughs born from the merging of different approaches to understanding reality. The consortium's greatest fear, Admiral Hayes spoke up, was that their power would be challenged by species they considered inferior. Instead, their power has been replaced by something greater, the power of genuine cooperation. Former Supreme Counselor Mexthar, who had chosen to embrace change rather than cling to the old ways, rose from his seat. His crystalline form now incorporated patterns inspired by other species' quantum structures. We thought we were perfecting life through control and harvesting. We never understood that true perfection comes from freedom and diversity. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives, former oppressors and former victims, now working together to build something new. Operation Genesis was never just about stopping the consortium's exploitation, she said. It was about showing the galaxy a better way forward, not through dominance or resource extraction, but through the recognition that every species has something unique to contribute. The quantum shield surrounding the chamber pulsed with new patterns as the consciousness network registered the assembly's collective emotion, hope, excitement, and determination. The age of exploitation was over. The age of collaboration had begun. In her private quarters later, Sarah stood at the window, watching ships from dozens of species moving through space around the assembly station. Admiral Hayes joined her, holding 2 glasses of Earth wine. Did you ever imagine, when you first discovered their plans for us, that it would end like this? Hayes asked, handing her a glass. Sarah smiled, thinking of all the changes she'd seen, all the possibilities still unfolding. Not exactly like this, but I knew humanity wouldn't just submit to being harvested. We never do what anyone expects, do we? That's what scared them the most about us. Hayes agreed. Not just our adaptability, but our unpredictability. Our ability to find a third option when they thought there were only 2. Through the quantum network, Sarah could sense the countless minds working together across the galaxy, each bringing their own unique perspective to the great project of building a new civilization. The consortium had sought to perfect life through control. Instead, they had inadvertently sparked something far more interesting, the beginning of life's next great evolutionary leap. And humanity, the species they had dismissed as a mere resource, had helped show the way.